I've made a lot of tuition videos on my channel, and you can see all those if you subscribe and have a look through my playlists, but I've not yet done any videos that assume absolutely no knowledge at all, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to sit at my piano and I'm going to go from the top with music theory so that it just makes a little bit of sense for when you come to see things, you think, what does that mean? And in this series of videos, I aim to answer those questions and to give you a solid basis of music theory. So sat at the piano here, which I believe is the easiest way to show this as a musical theory sort of diagram. It's all laid out very nicely here. So it's worth, even if you're not going to learn the piano or keyboard, to get yourself a little sort of, tiny little short keyboard which you can pick up in the supermarket or something for £30, which is actually really invaluable as a music theory tool. So I'd recommend that. Now we have a series of white notes here. These are called the natural notes, white keys on the piano. And then we have the black ones here that are sort of nestling in between them, that are the sharps and the flats. And I'm going to label those up for you now so that you can see what's happening. So, for example, if we look at the middle of the piano, we've got two black notes here. And then if we work outwards from this group, we've got two groups of 3, then 2, then 3, then 2, etc. All the way to the opposite ends of the piano. The one in between the two black notes, that is D. That's always a D, which is between these two black notes here. Now if we look up here to the next group of two black notes, the note in between those is also a D. But you can hear it's a higher up version. So these are termed an octave apart. So this note here, D, if I go up an octave, I get another D. If I go up another octave, I get a D here. So this D is 2 octaves above this one. Likewise, the other way on the piano, I have a lower D there. It's just gone off the camera there, and another D down. So there's lots and lots of Ds on the piano. Now the alphabetic order is the same as the alphabet. So if I go D, I have an E here, F, G. Now, what happens after G? Because we've got a D here, so if I go from D backwards along the alphabet, C, B, A. So it goes from G to A. So there isn't an H. There isn't a letter H or anything above that. It's just those letters A to G, those 7 letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now, it's useful if you've got one of those sort of dry white marker pens, you could have the notes marked maybe. Just mark them up. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, etc. Just so you can get to grips with where the notes are. Because also your ear will come into play here. Really, music is great because the ear will say whether something's wrong. And that's because we've been brought up with this system, with the music that we've listened to since day one, whether it be classical music or jazz or rock music or pop music on the radio, whatever we listen to, it conforms to this layout here. So, what are the black notes then? So if I have my D here, the black note that is immediately to the right of that D is called D sharp. So to sharpen a note means that you are going to the next black note. So if I have D, E, F there, that one is F sharp, and etc. We've got a G here, that's going to be a G sharp, we've got an A and an A sharp. Now, confusingly, these black notes are also known by another name. If we have D sharp here, the next note up, the next white note up from the D is the E. But if I go from here, if I go from the E to the black note to the left, that's called E flat. So this has two names. It's either D sharp or E flat. So if you've got any little white labels, you could put something at the top of each black note where you could call the sharps, you could say D sharp or E flat. Now, when I label things up with sharps and flats, I like to use a red pen for sharps because it's adding a bit, or a blue pen for flats because you're sort of going backwards a little bit, you're sort of going down. So you could think of it as a sort of thermometer, if you like. So we've got D sharp or E flat. That means this one here would be a D flat, or it could be a C sharp. And they sound the same, but they are written differently. So what I'm going to do now is to play a major scale. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's a scale that you've probably heard before. Anyone who's a singing student would have done this. So that is starting at 1 C and then ending on the C above that. And with the proper piano fingering this time, thumb underneath, now this is the reason that this distance here is known as an octave. Oct being 8, there are 8 notes in that scale. So note 1 is C and note 8 is C. I haven't used any of the black notes yet. Now, there is a reason for that. If I look at this scale here, I have the first note and the second note are what's called a step, a musical step, or more strictly, a tone. Then I've got another tone or a step. But here, from here to here, is called a half step. Notice that there's no black note here. So there's no note between this one, and that's why that is a half step there. So, just starting from the beginning, my major scale goes step, step, half step, 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 half step. Now the words step and tone are interchangeable. You can have a half tone or a semitone, which is strictly what it's called, but steps are fine. I've seen step used before and it just sort of makes a little bit more sense when we're sort of beginning with music. So we've got step, step, half step, 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 half step. Now, if I start this scale on another note, let's start it on the G down here. So I need a step, a half step, then the rest are steps, pretty much, until you get to the end. Another step, step, step. Now, how am I going to do this? Because I've got half step there, I need to have another half step to make a step. So we've got our first black note to contend with, and then half step to finish on G. So our G major scale then does this. So we have an F sharp. Why is it F sharp and not G flat? Well, the scale has to maintain an alphabetic run. So we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So if you had G and G flat, it wouldn't be right because it won't look right on the page. So in the next video, just after I finish this one, I'm going to introduce the musical notes on the page. Now, people do like to read music, some people don't read music, but to have at least a little bit of knowledge of how it works is sufficient. You don't need to be lightning quick at it. Let's start on another note with a major scale. Let's start on the D this time. So we have a step, then we have another step. That means we've got our F sharp, half step to G, then a step, then a step, and then another step, and then a half step to finish. So our D major scale has F sharp and C sharp in it. It's not G flat or D flat again, because that would muck up the alphabetical sort of run. So we have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So in the next video, I'm going to be showing you the musical notes on the stave, and you can even fit in the sort of musical notes on the piano here. You could put in lots of dust on my piano. You could fit in the musical notes here which line up with your white notes, which could be a useful thing for you.